Revenge office stories. Being forced to train the person taking your job is a special kind of hell. They really thought I'd just swallow the humiliation and fade away. They were dead wrong. This is the story of how I survived the degradation, plotted a brilliant escape, and then came back to poach not only my replacement but also their number one client. All while they watched their company rot from the inside out. They made me dig my own grave, but they forgot to take away the shovel, and I used it to dig theirs instead. This is a story about how the underestimated become the unforgettable. If you believe respect in the workplace isn't a suggestion but a requirement, and you're here for stories where justice is served ice cold, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. For 14 years, Innovate Corp wasn't just my employer, it was my home. I started there when we were just a scrappy underdog, a team of 20 trying to make a name for ourselves. I was 39 and poured the best years of my career into that place. My title was Senior Account Director, but that was just a label. In reality, I was the company's living, breathing archive of every major deal, every client crisis, and every hard-won victory. When a new project manager had a question about a legacy account, they didn't go to the archives. They came to me. When a junior salesperson was struggling, their manager sent them to my desk for a pep talk, which was really a masterclass in strategy. I was the backbone. I didn't just manage clients, I nurtured them. My relationships weren't built on transactions. They were built on years of trust, on late-night calls to solve problems, on flying across the country on a Sunday because a client had an emergency. My crown jewel was Apex Solutions. They weren't just our number one client. They were the client that put Innovate Corp on the map. They signed with us when we were nothing, all based on a pitch I'd spent 3 sleepless weeks creating. Over the next decade, I grew that account from a modest 5-figure contract into an 8-figure behemoth that made up nearly 30% of our annual revenue. I knew their CEO, Mark, as a partner, not just a contact. We brainstormed product ideas, celebrated milestones, and even attended each other's kids' graduation parties. My relationship with Apex was the bedrock of my career and, honestly, the financial cornerstone of Innovate Corp. I loved my job. I was proud of what I did and the company I helped build. The culture used to be collaborative like a family, but things started to change about a year ago when our founder retired. He was replaced by a man named Richard Pierce. Richard was a classic corporate raider type, brought in to optimize and streamline. He was all sharp suits, expensive watches, and a vocabulary full of empty business jargon. He didn't walk the floor to connect with people. He walked it to assess them like assets on a spreadsheet. In his world, loyalty was a liability and experience was just an expense. He didn't get the soul of the company because he didn't think it had one. From day one, we were like oil and water. He questioned my methods, which were all about relationships, preferring his impersonal, data-driven approach. In his eyes, I was a legacy employee, a relic. He couldn't see the value in the deep trust I had built with clients like Apex. He only saw my salary, which I'll admit was one of the highest in the company. A salary I had earned 10 times over. He started cutting me out of high-level strategy meetings I used to lead. He'd walk past my office without even looking at me. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was being carved into it. Still, I held on, thinking my track record and my relationship with Apex made me untouchable. I was so wrong. The day it all went down started like any other Tuesday. I was on the phone with Apex, smoothing over a small issue when a calendar notification popped up. Sync with Richard. No agenda, just 15 minutes in his glass-walled office. My stomach clenched. I walked in and sat down. Richard didn't offer a coffee, not even a smile. He got straight to it, his eyes fixed on a spot just over my shoulder. "Karen," he began, his voice completely flat. "As you know, we're in a process of strategic realignment. We're building a more agile, cost-effective team. He paused, and I swear the air was sucked out of the room. As part of this restructuring, he continued, your role as senior account director has been made redundant. Redundant. The word just hung there, cold and sterile. 14 years of my life, my identity, dismissed as redundant. It felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't say anything. My mind was racing, thinking about Apex, about the team I'd mentored, about all the promises of security I'd been given over the years. But Richard wasn't done. The real humiliation was still to come. However, he said, leaning forward like he was doing me a huge favor, given your deep knowledge of our key accounts, we want to ensure a seamless transition. We'd like you to stay on for the next 4 weeks, at full pay, to train your replacement. Train my replacement. The words hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't just firing me. He was asking me to personally hand over the keys to the kingdom I had built. It was a special kind of corporate cruelty. I knew I was in no position to refuse. I needed the money, and, more importantly, I needed the time. So I just nodded. Of course, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Whatever is best for the company. The next day, Richard walked a young man over to my desk. Karen, this is Alex. He'll be taking over the portfolio. I want you to give him a full download. Alex looked like he was in his late 20s, bright-eyed, ambitious, and totally clueless about the drama he'd just walked into. He stuck out his hand with a nervous smile. I shook it, my own hand feeling cold and foreign. This was him, the person hired to steal my job, my identity. And I was being forced to teach him how to do it. Those 4 weeks were a living hell. Every day was a masterclass in humiliation. I sat with Alex, walking him through my files, my strategies, my contacts. I had to explain the nuances of Mark's personality at Apex, the inside jokes that built our rapport, all the unspoken history. I was handing over my life's work. On the outside, I was a total professional. Inside, I was falling apart. I felt like a ghost haunting the halls of a place that had already forgotten me. But somewhere in all that despair, a tiny, cold spark ignited. Richard thought he was managing a smooth exit. He thought I was just some defeated woman who would fade away. He underestimated me, and in doing that, he made his first huge mistake. He gave me 4 weeks. 4 weeks with my replacement. 4 weeks with my files. 4 weeks to plan. That humiliation lit a fire under me. This was it. The validation. The career-defining project that would finally put me on a level where Marcus couldn't ignore or erase me. A wave of pure joy washed over me. So strong it almost made me dizzy. This was the payoff for everything. My loyalty, my long hours, my quiet competence, it was all about to pay off big time. It was in that exact moment of supreme, unfiltered triumph that Marcus climbed onto the small stage. He picked up a microphone, his smug grin reflecting in the champagne flute he held up. Friends, colleagues. His voice boomed through the speakers, hushing the room. I felt a surge of pride. He was about to announce the Q4 numbers to celebrate our success. Sarah gave my arm a congratulatory squeeze. As we close out a banner year, Marcus began, it's a time for reflection, a time to appreciate our successes and to make the hard decisions necessary for future growth. He paused for dramatic effect, letting his eyes sweep across the room. My smile was fixed, my back was straight. I was ready for my close-up. Growth, he repeated, his eyes locking onto mine, sometimes requires pruning. It means cutting away the branches that are no longer productive, to allow the stronger ones to flourish. My smile wavered. The air in my lungs felt sharp and cold. This wasn't the speech I was expecting. This was something else. Something dark and personal. We talk a lot about teamwork, he said, his words dripping with condescension. But at the end of the day, this is a business of individual contributions. And we have to ask ourselves, who is truly contributing? The publicness of it all, that was the point. This wasn't an HR meeting. This was a ritualistic shaming in front of the very peers and clients whose respect I had worked so hard to earn. He was exercising his power in the cruelest way possible. Then came the line that would be burned into my memory forever, and a special farewell to someone who won't be joining us in the new year. He held up the pink slip, not in an envelope, just a single folded sheet of paper, a prop for my public execution. My heart didn't just drop, it vaporized. The sounds of the room went fuzzy, like I was underwater. The festive lights blurred into ugly streaks. I could feel every eye in the room on me, some full of pity, others with a kind of horrified curiosity. Most people just looked away, suddenly fascinated by their shoes. Their silence was a form of complicity, a collective turning of the back that left me utterly alone. Sometimes, he finished, his voice a smug, triumphant purr, we have to trim the fat to keep the body healthy. No hard feelings, Amelia. He said my name. He actually said it. Until that moment, a tiny, irrational part of me hoped this was just some bizarre, twisted metaphor. But with that one word, he made it real. I saw Sarah's face, a mask of pure shock. She started to take a step toward me, but one of Marcus's guys intercepted her. I stood frozen, the champagne flute still in my hand. It felt impossibly heavy. I remember the overwhelming urge to throw it at him, to see that smug smile shatter along with the glass. But I didn't. Some survival instinct took over. I carefully placed the flute on a passing waiter's tray. I turned without looking at anyone and started the long walk out of that ballroom. Every step felt like a lifetime. The sound of my own heels on the marble floor was the only sound I could hear, a funeral drumbeat marking the end of my career. Humiliation is a unique kind of pain, and in that moment I felt worthless. But as the heavy doors closed behind me, cutting off the party, a new feeling began to smolder under the shock and shame. It was a cold, quiet rage, the kind of rage that doesn't scream, the kind of rage that builds empires. The taxi ride home was a silent movie of city lights sliding past the window. I didn't cry. The shock was a physical thing, a thick blanket that numbed everything. I walked into my apartment, the green dress suddenly feeling like a clown costume. The pink slip was crumpled in my fist. I smoothed it out on my kitchen table. It was real. The humiliation wasn't just the firing, it was the spectacle. It was designed to shatter my professional identity, to make me feel so worthless I'd just crawl away and disappear. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted me broken. He wanted the sterling group for himself. And he figured by publicly disgracing me, he would sever any loyalty Sarah had to me. He assumed our connection was purely transactional, a company asset he could just reassign. He underestimated me. And more importantly, he underestimated the power of a real human connection. Sleep was a joke that night. My mind just kept replaying a highlight reel of my 5 years at Apex. The late nights, the missed birthdays, the blind loyalty. For what? To be thrown out like a broken piece of office furniture. First came the anger, hot and blinding. How dare he? Then came the fear. I was 33. My entire career built inside one company. My reputation was now tied to a humiliating public firing. The helplessness was suffocating. But sometime before dawn, as the first gray light started to peek through my window, something shifted. The waves of powerless rage started to pull back, and in their place a cold, diamond-hard clarity took over. He'd made a critical mistake. His ego had completely blinded him. I dug out my employment contract from a dusty file box. I read it cover to cover, my analyst brain finally kicking into gear. And there it was. Or rather, there it wasn't. In his rush to put me in my place, he had used a standard termination form. There was no non-compete clause. It was a stunning oversight, born of pure arrogance. He never imagined I'd have the guts to fight back. He saw me as a loyal workhorse, not a strategic threat. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a general who has just found a fatal flaw in the enemy's fortress. He thought he'd taken my queen, but he'd just left his king wide open. He wanted the sterling group? Fine, I would take it, but I wouldn't stop there. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to build something better, an empire founded on the very respect and integrity he had so grotesquely mocked. He handed me a pink slip to break me. Instead, he had handed me fuel. The humiliation wasn't the end of my story. It was the inciting incident. The battle was just beginning, and I was no longer playing defense. I was about to go on the attack, and I'd be playing chess while he was still setting up the checkers board. The next morning, I didn't sleep in. I didn't wallow. I woke up at 5 a.m., just like always. But instead of putting on a suit for Apex, I laced up my running shoes and pounded out my anger and grief on the cold, empty streets. With every stride, a plan began to take shape. This wasn't going to be some petty revenge plot. This was going to be a masterclass in corporate strategy. Real revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something so successful your enemies become irrelevant footnotes in your own story. Have you ever felt completely underestimated at work? Had a boss who just didn't get your value? If this is hitting home, do me a favor and hit that like button. Let the world know there are more of us out there than they think. My last day at Innovate Corp was surreal. Richard threw a pathetic farewell party in the break room with a cheap sheet cake and lukewarm coffee. He gave a short, fake speech about my many years of service. He was so smug, so sure he had one. I just smiled, thanked everyone, and walked out of that building for the last time without looking back. The following Monday was my first day at Momentum Dynamics. Alex started with me. The energy was electric. We were welcomed, celebrated, and ready to work. On Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after I left, the hammer fell. Mark, the CEO of Apex Solutions, sent an email to Richard. He CC'd me and the CEO of Momentum Dynamics. It was short and brutal. It stated that, effective immediately, Apex Solutions was terminating its multi-million-dollar contract with Innovate Corp, using the 30-day cancellation clause that cited a change in key personnel. It then announced they had signed a new, expanded agreement with Momentum Dynamics, and that all future business would be directed to their new account team, me and Alex. I wasn't in the room, but a friend told me what happened. A stunned silence fell over the management floor. Richard supposedly read the email, then read it again, his face turning from pale to blotchy red. He stormed into his office and slammed the door. The panic was immediate. He had lost the company's largest client. He had lost the director who managed that client. And in a beautiful twist of irony, he had also lost the cheap replacement he'd hired. He hadn't just been outmaneuvered. He had been publicly dismantled. His entire streamlining strategy had blown up in his face, proving he had no idea that business isn't about spreadsheets. It's about people. He saw me as a cost to be cut, not an asset to be valued. And that mistake just cost his company 30% of its revenue. So where are they now? Me and Alex. We're killing it at Momentum Dynamics. We onboard Apex, and without Innovate Corp's bureaucracy, we've already grown their portfolio by 20%. Alex is the rising star I knew he could be. I got the respect, autonomy, and compensation I deserved. As for Richard and Innovate Corp, the fallout was brutal. Losing Apex created a massive, unfillable hole in their revenue. The board was furious. Richard's reputation as a turnaround specialist was toast. He was fired less than 6 months later. The company has since gone through more layoffs and is just a shadow of its former self. So what's the takeaway here? Never, ever underestimate the people you discard. The quiet ones, the ones you think will just go away, are the ones you should be most afraid of. They thought my knowledge was something they could just transfer and replace, like a hard drive. They didn't get that the relationships, the trust, and the instinct I'd built over 14 years were mine. They weren't company assets to reassign. They were my legacy, and I took my legacy with me. Revenge is a dish best served cold. And in my case, it came with a new job, a brilliant protégé, and my opponent's #1 client. And yes, it was very, very sweet. What do you think? Was this a calculated act of strategic genius or a ruthless move? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have your own story of workplace revenge, I want to hear it. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who's ever been made to feel redundant or undervalued. It might just give them some ideas.